Mhm.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I was
Hey.
just reading a book.
Yeah, it looked like a good book, man. I'm just sitting here for a second. I thought you would have heard me walking on in, but
I was so absorbed in the book that I now can read because I have that capability to do. After we so graciously learned about wizards last week, I felt it would be thematic, I suppose,
kind of
to
weird, man.
learn a bit more. This is my learned voice.
Okay.
It makes more sense to people. You know, those who are less learned, like myself last week, probably couldn't comprehend the contents of this book.
It's gonna be offensive to someone not learned. I think you should just say stupid. It's better.
Well, the people that I would actually include in the not learned category were there's only one person, and that would be me prior to today.
Oh.
So I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
It's all okay.
Yeah,
but before we get into
is good for, humor.
Yeah, people like that kind of shit. That's also incorporated in my vast amount of knowledge. But before we get into the revealing the contents of what I was reading, because you probably couldn't see it on the video there, and those of you that are listening through the audio waves, you definitely don't know what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
I was absorbed back to the camera, listening to a book as one does.
Make sure you pop into our YouTube channel if you want to see what just went down live.
It wasn't that exciting. I wouldn't do it. Maybe you would do it.
Nah.
Ryan wants you to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I recommend it. Hit that subscribe button.
Dude, what is up?
What's up, man? Not much. It's a
don't
new
know.
year, new me.
Well, I mean,
grad
speaking
school
of
starts tomorrow.
Oh shit.
I
Dude,
know.
I don't envy you, but I also do kind of envy you because you get to wait, is it all online?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
you
so I'm
feeling
ready
about
for
that?
the comments with the microphone, with the green screen.
I don't think anybody will do that.
The nice thing, I
You
can
know-
just roll out of bed and pop on, shower, nothing. Put on a
That is what
beanie.
I do for work most of the time.
Exactly.
Especially today, I was basically in bed the entire day. I was
Nice.
doing work, so I wouldn't worry about that. But that reminds me, earlier in our Discord, one of our friends had classes online, and he sent an image that seemed like something just straight out of the internet on some sort of subreddit. It was some anime girl with a room backdrop and
Cute.
a bunch of small drawings of the Hololive Ian girls
Oh, no.
in GIF form moving around. Did you see it on the Discord?
No, I have not
You
seen
didn't see this? So somebody in his class,
It's like behind him for Zoom or something?
you need to see it. Go into our Discord right now. I'll keep talking about it to describe it, but
Okay.
I don't remember what it's in General Waffle, or if it might be in VTubers.
Probably.
Because we do have that because I am very absorbed in that rabbit hole. But somebody was in his class with
I
Live
see
2D.
that.
That was their model. It moved. Every single one of those drawings of little girls in the background, the Hololive Ian girls, moves.
For a
Talk about
class.
for a class. The most distracting shit. Like, he's my hero, but if I was the teacher,
Did the teacher say anything about this? I mean,
I don't know, dude. If I was the teacher, I'd be like, all right, I don't know what this is.
I know
But
my student
please-
does not look like that.
And I asked too, they had to do self-introductions. And he didn't answer my question about like what the hell happened. But I assume they had to do this. And our friend also said that it was a guy just in this VTuber live 2D
Yeah, so it's
model
like this
thing.
cute anime girl, and then you say, "Yeah, this is
Hey
Jeff."
guys, how's it going? No, nothing against that too. Also my hero, man. Live your truth. But
It's just hilarious for like a professor, teacher to see. Okay, this is my student, whatever, and then I doubt they have any idea what a VTuber is. They could prove me
Could
wrong.
be.
It could
you
be
can give
wrong.
them the benefit of the doubt, but for that, it's like I would guess maybe not legally, but on paper, your first and last name and whatever other information they needed is the person that's taking this class. Even if you're somebody that identifies as something like that in some sort of progressive form of thinking, for the school, if you are obliged to show up on camera, but you're a VTuber right now, it's like, does that count?
I don't think I'll see any of that stuff for mine. I could be surprised, but
I think it's probably a pretty unique situation for this right here, but that was the highlight of my morning learning
my
about
class
this.
is weird too because it starts at 9:00, right? And we're from 9 to 10. We're with the professor in like a full-on opening ceremonies thing. I don't know. And then after that, we split up into 3 different groups. but we're using the same Zoom call. And so each group is only 25 minutes. And during the other people's groups, I guess I can just go leave. I don't know. I'll pull up a game or I'll play something. I don't know what I'm going to do for those 40 minutes. I'm not doing anything. And then
Wait, so you just keep the call open?
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. They might say, all right, everyone that's not in group A, fuck off. Go do whatever you want to do. And then come back in 20 minutes if you're in group B. If not, then you can come back for group C. Not entirely sure how this is going to work. It's like a waste of time personally, but whatever.
To be fair, a lot of class can be a waste of time, but we don't need to get into the school system.
Why have us be there for 3 hours?
I don't know. I mean, you're paying for it. If it was any shorter, maybe you feel like you weren't getting your money's worth. Maybe?
I don't know. I'm just going to play. I guess I'll just watch a stream or something during that time.
Just leave your camera on and the mic as well, and then don't mute it. And make some interesting antics throughout that entire experience. I mean, that could be a good time. Possibly. But I haven't done school in forever.
Screen guy, I'm sure. Unless there's, hey, there could be more streamers. That'd be fun. Other guy with a mic.
I mean, at this point, how weird is streaming / having good audio setup / having a green screen nowadays? Is it that odd?
It's been, in all these things I've done, it has been weird. Like, I've only done work stuff so far. Everyone's always like, hey, are you playing a video game right now? Like, I had one of my bosses. I guess they think these are like gaming headphones that I'm wearing. And they're like, hey, what game are you playing right now, Ryan? I'm like, dude, I'm watching you.
Wait, one of your bosses?
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I got headphones on.
You guys have Zoom meetings for work? I mean, it's not unrealistic, but I didn't figure you would do that.
Like a faculty meeting. It doesn't make sense.
These types of headphones can only be used for playing video games.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. But you know what else is ridiculous?
Magic.
You just going to take the... Okay, cool. Yeah, magic is ridiculous. If you want to know what I was fancifully reading, it totally wasn't the deluxe edition of Berserk with some of the first chapters in it.
Whoa, it looks like a Carol Rune.
You see, exactly. See? From Bloodborne, if you guys remember that kind of shit. Good video games. We talked about those in one of our previous episodes. But we talked also about Wizards last week.
We did. And something that Wizards can do, and something I need to rectify, is they can learn a lot of spells. They can't learn every spell, which I may or may not have mentioned last week in the episode. You know, I am not the primo source of D&D news. I'm just a entertaining source of knowledge, co-hosting with Ryan. But they can learn a lot of spells, and that got us thinking. We mentioned in the last episode that we should talk about spells, magic,
the schools that they're from, magic, things that maybe we like,
casting.
That's what we're doing here today. Ryan's going to do the more informative part of it, as he usually does, making sure you have a strong basis for whatever the hell magic is and how you even cast a spell. And for me, as I've only really played warlocks for the most part, he's you point this way.
Nope.
Which way?
There you go.
That way?
Yeah.
He's Ryan.
He's Braxton.
This is the Dungeon Crawl, and today we're going to talk about spells. Thank you for keeping me in line, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Not just wizards. We're delving into the every spell category, every class category. Of course, as of late, before Tasha's, I'd say spells were more restricted to certain classes, but now it seems like at least every class can cast a spell of some sort.
Well, going through these, I kind of noticed that there were more spells exclusive to certain classes than I thought there was, which surprised me quite a bit.
We were wrong about that last episode.
Well, I mean, a lot of the spells that most people use can be used by 3, 4, 5, or 6 different classes, you know? And I mean, I guess that leads straight into like what is a spell, as we usually do. Ryan,
or some you can only get from certain subclasses, but yeah.
Yeah. So what are spells?
What is a spell, Braxton? That's a great question. It's covered in the PHB, the Player's Handbook. And it basically says stuff like it's a discrete magical effect, a single shaping of the magical energies, yada, yada, yada. Basically, a lot of words to say it's a thing that you cast. And what is casting? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's like an ability, something that you use up that can, lots of different effects. It can be used with spells. It can be a weapon. It can protect you from stuff. It can do damage. It can protect you from damage. It can remove conditions. Conditions are like, being poisoned or being paralyzed. Or it can impose these conditions. It can drain life away. It can restore life. There's lots of different things that spells can do. And we're going to do our best to cover most of that stuff today.
This episode's going to be really long. We're going to go through every single spell, and we're going to read every single description and give our thought on every single one of them. Ryan, did you prep your notes for everything?
Yes.
I can see worry on your face. I don't think you did.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. We're not going to be doing that. We're just going to jump through different schools, talk about a lot of what Ryan mentioned before here. But as usual, maybe if you want to get a snack, if you're in a car and drive by like a Shipley's Donut if you're in the Texas area.
Ooh, donuts.
I miss donuts. I don't get them here that often just because going outside sucks because it's very cold.
Chicago's got lots of donuts, I'm sure.
Oh, it's got lots of donuts. They're just, I would have to either order, which is expensive, and there's just this is a small tangent, a special feeling that you get when you order something off of DoorDash or Uber that isn't sustenance. It's just a treat. It feels especially wrong.
Or when you order it and you're super excited for your cookie to show up.
And they don't have it.
But hold on. You ordered a couple other things and you're like, you know what? I'll treat myself to a cookie. Yeah, it's only $1 extra. And with that $1 extra, I'm not paying the extra $2 for a small order fee. So why not? Right? And then it gets here. You check your meal, you're eating, and then you look in the bag and there's no cookie.
It's happened many times.
Happened yesterday to me. I was sad.
I always get upset. This McDonald's, another tangent, always forgets to give me a straw, especially when I order a drink that needs a straw. It is the most depressing. Like, what do I eat it with a spoon? I digress.
Right.
For a segue, spells have things that they also need sometimes, or else you can't cast them.
That's true. Those are called spell components. Mm-hmm.
Should we start there? How to cast spells?
Sure. Well, casting. Yeah. So casting needs certain things. Sometimes if you're looking down your spell list, you'll see things like a V, an S, or an M. Sometimes all of those. Sometimes one. Sometimes two. A random combination of all three of these. They mean things. The V is a verbal component, which means you have to be able to speak. If you're, being suffocated, if you can't, if your mouth is covered, you're bound by something, paralyzed, you're not going to be able to utilize this part of the spell. So something to keep in mind if you want to cast Hold Person when you're being held personed.
That can really blindside you too. There's definitely been parts in games that we've played where like we initially didn't observe spell components a lot. Mm-hmm. And at some point I do something and maybe my voice was restricted or I was tied and you're like, you can't do that. And I go, excuse you?
I can't.
What do you, I can cast a spell. I learned it. No, look at the components. I'm like, oh.
Like he said being tied down, that's somatic component. There's having to move. A lot of people tend to think of this as just like hand gestures. But the problem with that type of thinking is if you are restrained, you also can't cast somatic spells, which means it has to be more than just this. Because if I'm restrained, I can still move my hands. It's more like arm motions and stuff. So if you're restrained, you can't cast that type of a spell. And I bring this up in my game every so often, and it's important to remember as a DM or as a player that this can change. If you're trying to cast a spell stealthily, this can very much change if that spell is successful in being, stealthy, because you got to say something and you have to move your fingers and arms and hands and stuff. So keep that in mind.
Think about it as like you can't really swing a weapon around if you can't wield it in the correct manner, or if there's a wall like Dark Souls, you clang it against the wall. It's like, it doesn't happen. So I feel like it's us doing our due diligence, telling those newer players about this, because you can, with an experienced DM, get fucked over by it, which is kind of fun. It's kind of fun sometimes being like, oh, I'm interacting with the game. It makes it feel like an actual experience.
Because you're looking at this block of text, that explains what suggestion does, and you don't realize
tunnel vision on how cool your spell is.
Yeah, and you don't realize this small little block up here is arguably more important than that, because this is what even gets you to the big block of text. You have to make sure you meet those components first.
Yep.
And the final thing is the material components, which we mentioned in the wizards section, can be bypassed if you have a component pouch or a spellcasting focus.
Which I learned last week, and we've gone on many escapades to get spells, which Ryan mentioned also is very fun.
It is. Makes a quest.
As long as they have no monetary value, you don't need them. And I think most of mine did. But I needed to get like a raven feather of a sleeping raven. Like some of these spell components are very outlandish.
It's really weird.
And it's not just from like sources outside of D&D. it's also one's in. Like you need a pickled tentacle.
I mean, a lot of them are definitely like references and inside jokes to stuff.
That's true. Very, very true. Okay, enough about components though. Where do we go from here?
Well, what exactly is magic? Before we dive into the schools of magic, what is magic?
That can be different depending on whatever the hell you're doing.
Very true. The D&D multiverse has an explanation for it, but of course, if you're doing a homebrewed world, it can be whatever the hell you want. The very common one that I've seen is like ley lines of magic that people are tapping into. The multiverse of D&D says stuff like that all existence has magical power inside of it, kind of similar to ley lines. They have gods and goddesses of what they call the weave, which is, again, very similar to like an outside plane that you're tapping into the powers of the universe. And through this tapping into the arcane magic, you're able to pull yourself into the weave for a brief moment and cast this arcane ability.
Cast magic hand to give somebody a wedgie. You got this massive, awesome spell casting, and then it's just,
hey, whatever you want.
Hey,
man.
That's what makes it cool, I suppose.
Yeah. Definitely talk to your DM on seeing exactly what.
Yeah, there's a lot of flavor you can do with this too. And like Ryan mentioned, what magic comes from can be based off of that world that they've written as well. So it can really be from, there's no like official way, I would say. I mean, there might be a source book that D&D has written that has given a specific answer, and you can go by that. A lot of what I run into with, I suppose, mechanics that aren't outright written in D&D. I was talking with Kenneth earlier, it's a little bit of a tangent, about letting vampires in. And this can equate to spells just depending on what your world is. But it's so interesting to me that my common knowledge is that letting a vampire in, it's got to be the owner of the house. But D&D had a different rule. So it's weird to see like what rules 5e actually has and what rules it doesn't.
Invite them in. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's really weird. And he's like, Kent, if Strahd were to use speak with animals and he spoke to the cat in the house and the cat said you could come in, can he come in?
Sure, why not?
D&D says if it's a resident of the house.
Yeah.
So it could technically work.
So, but if it's a friend's just staying over.
But on topic, speak with animals is a spell. So let's get back into it. What is next, Ryan? What do we do?
I think it's time we check out the schools, man.
So if you're like me, these schools of magic have almost no relevance as a warlock.
Oh.
As a warlock. Did you think I was going to say wizard?
Like, as wizards, say period. Does. Have no relevance, period.
Well, depending on your perspective, like specifically for warlocks, it doesn't matter at all. Because I don't think there's a single like requirement of anything that says you can only learn from a certain school of magic.
But it's more so like detect magic, I'm sure. I think warlocks can probably get detect magic or a similar equivalent to that. Detect magic, you can tell what type of magic you're detecting. So
what use does that have? Like why are these schools even here?
That's a great question, Braxton. So if you're casting detect magic, which is one of these spells, which we'll get into later, which is one of these schools, I mean, you can detect something. Let's say you detect a chest, okay? A chest has a magical, you can feel this magic on it. It's lighting up in your vision. And the player asks me, well, what type of school is this? And I tell them it's illusion magic. Then you can think, okay, maybe this chest isn't even real. Maybe it's just a straight up illusion. Or I could say this is, you see, it's not the chest itself, but there's something inside of it that's covered with some sort of enchantment-based magic. So they can think maybe there's something in here that if we open it, maybe it'll poof out and make us charmed, or, it just kind of gives you educated ideas on what's next. Of course, this only transpires if you know what these different schools mean, which is what we're here to tell you about.
So it can give some sort of mechanical advantage, I suppose.
Yeah.
Even RP as well. But
if your players would know this, I guess if your characters would know this, I guess it's different. But if you know detect magic, I'd say you might, probably.
Yeah. These schools have just always been one of those things to me that somebody in some sort of creative product they've made, be it like a game, tabletop RPG, is one of those like flavorful things that they really didn't need to add in there. Yeah. Especially for certain players, like it's just not relevant at all. So I appreciate these kinds of little nuances because you don't need them, really.
No, it's not super necessary. I guess besides the wizard subclasses, each subclass, for the most part, has a specific specialty of one of these schools.
So if you're like Ryan and I, where you like a lot of lore or flavor, these things are definitely great for it if you want to have some schools, literal schools that study these areas.
Yeah.
Again, Skyrim has several majors at the college. Again, just to mention that, because everybody knows what it is, who are learning certain things, and it can influence what kind of character they are. So bringing these in for NPCs is fun sometimes. You could have a good time with making a character that's a necromancer scholar and not actually being like a bad person, because necromancy gets a bad rap, man.
It does.
Not all the spells are bad.
So, okay, if you think about it, though, necromancy gets a bad rep, and we'll dive into, this would be a great segue into these schools. Necromancy gets a bad rep, but some of these other schools, dude, I almost feel like they're worse than necromancy. Enchantment, you can literally mind control somebody. So, I mean, that seems worse to me than raising the dead.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing, I guess raising the dead's taboo, just depending on what your religions and gods might do if it's unrightful. But I mean, I would say also in certain areas, just the not conjuration, which evocation, which is a lot of the time just straight up damaging spells. You can liken that as well to destruction, killing people. Why is that not taboo? I guess
I feel like one of the only schools of magic that's super good, Abjuration, protecting people.
Well, I like Conjuration, but it's not always. Its use isn't always evident.
Like, nice. One that has, I can't think of any downsides. Well maybe that's a good segue. So, Abjuration, let's dive into it. Abjuration is the first school on the list. It's specifically, as I was kind of saying, protective in nature. It's designed to protect people, shield people, not just from damage or from attacks, but also from evil, bad, terrible things. But it's I think it gets a less important rep. People think this is not as nice of a school as you would, because it doesn't do big flashy effects. But there are some spells in here, don't be fooled. There are some spells in here that do some very strong, very cool things.
Well, I would argue that some of the most used spells in the entire game of Dungeons and Dragons are in this school
Abjuration,
of magic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some that I didn't even realize were in this as well was super cool to me. So how are we going to go through these schools? What do you want to start with?
Well, we can talk about some of the staples, some spells that everyone probably knows from these lists, and some that if you're interested in these, or if you're a wizard of this school, you'll probably want to pick up or probably use quite a bit. The spell magic is up there.
Yes, absolutely.
If you had to guess, it dispels magic, and it dispels more than just what you would think of magical effects. It can dispel any magic, period. It might have to have a roll on it if it's a high magic spell, but there's a chance in there. And you can always cast it at higher levels.
Yeah, and depending on who you are and what your class is, actually, mage armor is always a good one to pick up. I think it boosts from your dexterity. So you might want to keep an eye on that. And then something I didn't know that was in this, let alone just a warlock-only spell, is Armor of Agathis. But I guess it makes sense. Abjuration is
less of a staple,
protecting specifically. Less of a staple, but like it's a staple for me for warlocks. If you're a warlock and you want to have
true. If you're warlock, okay, fair. Dispel evil and good, I'd also toss in there as a staple.
Well, you're dancing around one of the banes of my existence.
What do you mean?
Counterspell.
Okay, so I guess that's a staple. Yeah, you're not wrong.
It is a staple. If you play this game and you get abjuration spells and you're a wizard or something, counterspell's in there.
But it's one of those spells that does, I mean, I guess it feels good to use, but it doesn't feel good to get it used on.
Yeah, no, I hate it. I don't think it should be removed from the game. I just hate experiencing it in one way or another.
And you can counterspell a counterspell.
That's my point, though. Because other enemies can get it, I feel obligated, if I had the ability to take it. Because if I'm not, I'm just performing less. Now, that's if you're trying to be like really great and you want to beat all of the encounters, if you want to min-max technically. But
I mean, it can come in clutch. Counterspell can come in clutch and is a very, very strong spell. Don't get me wrong. It's a great staple.
It comes in clutch, especially if the baddies have it, Ryan. Let me tell you.
True.
Especially as a warlock. That's always my perspective, is like, I don't have many of these spell slots and I don't
give it to many baddies anymore. Okay.
I wouldn't blame you. It's in the game.
True,
you use it.
I don't give it to many people in it, many of my baddies anymore. I give them more other fun abilities to do as reactions. Because, I mean, it is using up your reaction, so sure.
Yeah.
Greater Restoration, I'd also toss in there. This has saved many of my players' experiences in game, being cursed by something. Some guy gets Greater Restoration and finally everyone's saved. Do you think there's any specific staples before we get into like our favorite fun spells? Because these are all the ones that I feel like you probably should check out.
Well, something that is always pretty useful depending on the campaign that you're in, the banishment spells they can be pretty important for certain campaigns and might even just be flat out necessary if you're making an arc to have somebody that knows banishment as a tool to the players as well.
Yeah, a very unknown fact about that one is, if it's something that's from another plane, it stays there.
Yeah.
It can't come back.
Really cool. I love using that for story reasons as well. But for staples, I mean, that's pretty much it to me.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites now heading into that area?
So, yeah, I definitely do have favorites. One that I came across
You go one, and then I'll go one. Let's go back and forth.
I've got two.
I get a lot, so we'll get yours out of the way.
A lot. Well, technically, I've got three, but I've already mentioned one.
I like
so
this.
the first one, it's something that I didn't know existed, and it's the only 7th level spell that's here is Symbol.
Ooh, okay.
So to me,
big boy spell.
I don't want to say, I don't want to say that I just find large, big boy spells and say that's my favorite.
Yeah, that's
I just like it because
text.
It's a massive block of text, but basically there's several different words that you can pick here that add different effects within an area. I just really like it because of how versatile it is. Of course, warlocks can't learn it. It's for bards, clerics, druids, and wizards. But for example, you can use Death, which each target must make a Constitution saving throw, taking 10d10 necrotic damage. Failed save or has. I mean, the effects on their own are pretty silly and not amazing, but I just like how versatile.
Yeah, so this puts down it's not something you want to use in combat. This is the type of spell you would prepare an area with, to lead down baddies in the future. Put a glyph on the ground and they step on it and this effect happens.
The names are just so powerful sounding to me. Of course, Death is great, but you've got Discord, Hopelessness, Insanity. It just sounds cool to me. So that's one of mine.
Something we didn't cover, actually, I guess is pretty important, is casting time. So some are just take an action, which means they're good for combat. Some take a minute, which is probably not very good for combat unless you have people to protect you for 6 rounds.
That's a full round, yeah.
Yeah, or 10 rounds.
Yeah,
it's 10 rounds.
I don't know what it is
because each round is 6 seconds, 60 seconds. So it's 10. Yeah, so 10 rounds.
This isn't a combat episode, so I don't need to be an expert on that subject.
And then there's some that take 10 minutes, yada yada. But there's some that will say ritual, and this means you can cast it. It takes you 10 minutes. Such as Identify, takes you 10 minutes, but you don't use a spell slot. So it can be very handy.
Something else too, spells obviously will have a range, and this is identified within that as well. And it can be a different area of effect, touch, distance, etc. Everybody's very used to that.
Cubes. So if you're playing if you're playing on a map, it could be important to either be good with math or buy little things that can tell you how big the spell is.
There's usually a standard size for squares, and then concentration as well, just to get this out of the way. If you're hit, oftentimes based off of a certain amount of damage that you took, you need to get a Constitution saving throw that beats that. Or the spell stops, which can be very useful.
Check.
Yeah. Concentration?
So it's basically you just need to roll, and if it's over...
so it's not based off of con?
I don't believe so. I always get so confused and forget what concentration checks entail.
That's all the spells I get as a warlock because it maximizes the use of my spell slots for the most part.
Yeah, it is con, yeah. But it's if it's under 10 damage, then you just have to get a 10 and above, and then other than that, then it's the damage halved, and you have to get above that to keep concentrating. And you can't cast another spell that's while you're concentrating on one spell.
Alrighty. Ryan, what do you got for favorite spells?
Good question. A very easy early one. I got Alarm on there. I think it's very clutch. What do you mean, Braxton? You're making a face. Alarm, I think, is a very clutch, low-level spell.
How so?
Because you can cast it at the end of the day. It's a ritual spell, so you don't have to leave any slots open. You can protect your party for the entire night. No one's sneaking up on you while you have this spell.
What's the range on it?
What do you mean, what's the range on it? How far?
Wide is the alarm?
Okay, all right. You want to get into you try to pull. It's a 20-foot cube.
All right, so just stand outside of that 20 foot and blast them apart.
Yeah, but you want to use it more as a ward to let you know that someone's coming. So if you have a hallway, put it at the one end of the hallway, and so they have to walk down it. Something like that.
I get you.
Okay.
I just like giving you a hard time.
Yeah, that's a good spell, dude. Don't rack on alarm.
I'm just pushing you. I want to know why it's a good spell, Yeah. I want to know the reasons.
I feel you.
Alrighty. One of my other ones, simply for the reason of beating one of the only spells that beats the wish spell is Mind Blank. You know about that one?
Yeah, so you're going for all the big boy spells. I see.
This just happens to be within and I already talked about Armor of Agathis. That's a level 1 spell. Okay,
That's true.
Calm down. It's okay. These are fun. This one's cool. It is a big boy spell. Most of you might not use it, so that's why I want to talk about it. So basically, it just prevents somebody from being able to think or remember a certain period of time, be affected by certain spells, and even the wish spell, if somebody were to use to try to understand or peek into somebody's mind, it still doesn't work.
Yeah, it lasts for a full day. So you can, like, if you're being interrogated or someone's being interrogated, you can cast that on them so they don't say shit.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it interests me so much is, like, something that can beat out a spell that's supposed to be able to do anything to me. It's like, where does the source of this power come? How does that work?
Yeah.
That's so cool to me.
Wish is a big boy spell.
All right. Wish is a big boy spell.
One I like is Shield. I almost put this in the staples. I think Shield is very strong. It's good to protect thyself in combat. If you're getting hit, move your AC up a little bit, especially if you're, a weakling little wizard.
Especially early on, for sure.
Yeah.
And if you're a class that can swap out spells, I think it's definitely one that you should be thinking about taking. Just keep yourself alive. If you want to be risky, get a more fun spell. Probably do that too.
Is that all you got
Any
favorites?
more? That was all my favorites. Keep going. Shoot them off.
Yeah,
man.
some of my other favorites. I got Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum.
All right.
It's similar to Alarm, but a little stronger, meaning you can get like a whole place that's just yours to protect your party. Similar to the mansion that you get later on as well. I think both of those
one
are
of the new Warlock subclasses. The Genie one.
Oh, do that class.
Nah, not as cool. Yeah.
Then we got Imprisonment, which is like the banishment stuff that we were talking about. It's beautiful and very fun, but you have to have some space and time. So it could be a fun, like a thing that you have to in combat. The only way you can kill this guy, he's like a god or demigod or something. The only way to kill this guy is to cast Imprisonment on him. So one of your players or an NPC has to sit there and in front of this demon for a minute. So the party has to protect this individual for a minute while they're, speaking these words and casting the spell. That'd be a fun 10 rounds of combat.
Yeah. Super tense. Or like an NPC that's doing it, kind of like protect this guy. There was actually one that, a cantrip that I like, but it's in Unearthed Arcana, so I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's really interesting. I'm surprised there isn't one like this already. It's Virtue, actually, and this just basically allows you, if a target has at least 1 HP, just to avoid being able to bring somebody back from the dead, they get temp HP equal to 1d4 plus your spellcasting mod, and their temp HP. I just think it's really, really, really powerful for the very beginning of a campaign. It only lasts for 1 round, but especially if you only have like 6 HP, that can be very, very helpful. Your cleric would have to do it every turn, though.
It's interesting to see which of these schools have the most amount of class, or have the most amount of spells, or have the most amount of cantrips. This one does not have like any cantrips. It's like 2.
Yeah, there's not that many, and then especially later on, there's not that many spells either. But it's pretty buffed out with mid range. I mean, there's a wide range of spells that are here, and you got to remember that since it's not dealing damage, they don't need to have a bunch of different damage types. So once you protect in a certain way, you can only continue to do that in a certain amount of other ways before you run out of ideas, I suppose. So
my favorite big boy spell is Prismatic Wall.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, you put this thing up, it's going to take some badass son of a bitch to get through it. Because if you fail all those saves, you're taking 10d6, 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 you're getting restrained, you're getting blinded.
Just wait 10 minutes.
Oh, that's a long time. Whatever's happening inside that wall can be finished in 10 minutes.
Hopefully.
It's cool.
It's like giving you a hard time, more so. Alrighty. Does that do it for Abjuration?
Yeah.
All right. Next up is one of my favorite schools.
Conjuration? All right, we'll take it away. What is Conjuration?
Conjuration is basically being able to bring something from somewhere else forth from the pits of hell or from a different space and time, or being able to kind of not necessarily craft something, but it's the idea of like creation and pulling forth. Kind of similar, you could say necromancy bleeds into it a little bit, but in this case, it's mostly not relying on something else. It's just completely bringing it forth. If you think about any sort of basic summoner from any video game, this fits into it. Making a sort of magical weapon, bringing forth vines from the ground to tangle somebody, spewing grease onto the ground.
Bro.
These sorts of things are included into Conjuration. It's pretty easy to explain.
It's
All right.
It's a cool school.
It's my favorite. I mean, it doesn't do exactly what summoning in D&D, specifically with monsters, isn't and hasn't been one of the best things ever. It doesn't feel as great in a video game, but most of the time I end up picking Conjuration spells in the games that I play.
Tried to fix this.
I don't think you can fix it.
A lot of summoning spells. I mean, if we're getting into the staples, most of Conjuration is going to be the summoning shit, etc. stuff.
I mean, a staple for me and like something that fits into certain classes, again, for Warlock, is like find familiar stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my favorite spells ever. And then there's another that leads off that is to, you can find multiple familiars. What is the name of it? Flock of familiars? Something like that. Something like that. So those are definitely two of my first staples that I would start talking about.
Yeah, this has a pretty expansive list of different spells in here. The other one, I guess, Plane Shift you could put in here as a pretty important Conjuration spell. And I mean, Wish obviously is in this group. It's
so interesting to see that Conjuration encompasses things like Wish. It's a very loose. I mean,
you're creating something out of nothing, I guess, with Wish.
I just think that flavor is really cool.
To me, Conjuration's in a weird place because, like you're saying, it does encompass a lot of stuff. And the stuff that it does is not always the best. Like summoning is not the coolest in D&D. There's some cool aspects about it, but then you realize after you get in combat with it, that's a little cumbersome and a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, one of the passages they give basically just says it's pulling something over any distance, place, however great or far it is Conjuration.
Yeah.
And I guess Wish kind of encompasses like an idea or a concept that you pull into existence. And at 9th level, you better be able to just conjure up existences and thoughts and ideas. And I guess something that we should have done before as well, whenever you're making a character, something that you have to think about a lot, depending on who you are, is picking a cantrip. So just running through like any of these cantrips were super important, especially for Conjuration spells. You've got Mage Hand in here.
Very important. It's used a lot.
Absolutely a staple. But within some of the other cantrips, Conjuration, I don't think there's many that are super useful in that area.
No, Acid Splash is pretty nice as at least as a cantrip. Damaging cantrips can be fun. I mean, Poison Spray too. Can be nice, but it's very easy to not do damage with them because they are cantrips.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue that Misty Step can be it is one of my favorites, but that's something that shows up quite a lot in certain classes, especially like Invocations. It's given one that D&D likes to, specifically 5th edition, give Misty Step as a spell to people.
I'd add on to Misty Step Dimension Door too.
Oh my gosh,
those two spells are some of my favorites, and I'd say less Dimension Door, but it's definitely staples to this class. They're very strong, very kind of get out of jail free cards, literally.
Absolutely. All right, do you got any favorites?
Yeah, Hunger of Hadar, dude. Tentacles. Really? Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe not the coolest damage that it can do, but just the concept of these void, Lovecraftian creatures crawling out into the material plane. I love it.
I would pick it. It's so underwhelming for how cool it is. Like when I pick a spell, it's got to be as powerful as it is sounding cool. And if it doesn't match up, I don't pick it, which makes me kind of sad. a little bit sad. Of course, I mentioned already Misty Step is one of my favorite. Yeah. Find Familiars as well. Those are the staples that I mentioned. I've always liked Thunder Step as well. You see, I like teleportation and lightning and summoning stuff. Those are always those are themes for me that you'll see. And I was really, really partial to Summon Aberration that came from Tasha's, just because of how flavorful it is. I mean, you can summon 3 different types of monsters. I love things that do a bunch of different stuff depending on the situation it is, especially if you don't have that many spell slots left, or you're playing as a warlock, so you always don't have that many spell slots left. Variety is super important. But yeah, there's Wish, of course, which actually isn't one of my favorite spells for some reason. It's just,
you haven't cast it yet.
I've never cast it yet. We'll see how it goes. I just don't imagine it being one of those things that you ever
that you love
out there,
No, it's more of it's so much like the deck of many things. It's nothing you need, but it's fun.
Whenever I find something that I really like, 2 things happen. with the example here, Reality Break, I saw the name. I'm like, that sounds badass, right? What the fuck is that? I want it. Oh, wow, it's from Wildmount. Of course, Matt Mercer makes good stuff. All the stuff he makes in tandem with D&D tends to be like, wow, I'm excited. I want to cast
the
that.
chronomancy stuff, yeah.
Wizard only spell.
Well, yeah, man.
2 things happen. It's from a different source, and only wizards can cast it. Like Vision of the Far Realm, target takes 6d12 psychic damage. I mean, it's not that exciting, but it's a Vision of the Far Realm. They see it, and they're just like, what the fuck?
That's all you and I see, Far Realm, and our eyes just glaze over.
Yeah, so those are some of my favorite ones. Outside of that, I mean, yeah, you got cool stuff like Teleport, Plane Shift. There's even a wizard spell. What was the name of it? You can summon an entire tower yourself, and the more spell slots you use, levels, the more floors it has, and it gives a certain room for you to use. That's super cool. All right.
I mean, I'd add Spirit Guardians to maybe even a staples and favorites list for me.
That's one of the best spells in here, I would say.
I looked over this spell very quickly when I first started playing D&D, and I had one of my players use it when we were fighting the hags in Curse of Strahd, and oh my god.
Came in so close.
That is such a strong spell. I had no idea, and now every time I have a player that says, all right, I'm going to cast Spirit Guardians, like, oh no, you just destroyed like half of my group. Very strong.
I think in
spell.
the Adventure Zone they use it as well. Merle liked to cast this one. So that's where I primarily know it from. It was always super useful for them.
Especially for a cleric. You know, a cleric don't have too many damage-y control-y spells like this. So it's very strong.
I always say that, and then somebody goes, bruh. Yeah, they do. I'm like, well, they've got a couple that chonk it out.
It's not the ones that you are, if you're going cleric, you're probably more so focusing on, all the healing and reviving spells.
Absolutely.
And that's about it. That's all the ones I got here. We kind of covered most of them.
Yep. Next up, I think you mentioned earlier that it might be one of the best schools, but Divination? Yeah, I know there's some spells in here that you, as a DM, don't particularly like having.
I mean, I do, but it's tough to prepare for, It
is, yeah. I see what you mean. You do never know.
So Divination, it's a very small spell list. There's not much going on in here, but what's going on here, like the meat and potatoes of this area, is pretty juicy. So it's basically revealing and granting knowledge, sometimes unknown knowledge, to whoever is casting this. It also, allows you to see the truth behind certain people, abilities, through illusions and visions. It's a very strong, deceptively so, I would say, strong class.
Yeah, especially if you're not just playing dungeon crawl type of games with more story and whatnot, it can be super, super useful. Some of these spells you shouldn't even pick if there's like zero role play or not much depth to your DM's world. You just flat out shouldn't pick them.
But with that said, some of the staples are going to probably be in your game, period. It's because it's got identify, right? That's a spell that I feel like everyone should, at least one person in every party should have, or else you're going to attune to some curse item. And even still, you could still.
I think guidance is a super common cantrip that people pick.
Going cantrip, yeah, 100%. Guidance is very strong. It's often, I would say, misconstrued because it's a concentration spell, and people are always like, I'm going to cast guidance on everybody at once. Let's go. Like, well, only do it on one person.
You can't quite do that. Curb your enthusiasm. Just a tad. Just a tad. Comprehend languages.
Yeah, comprehend languages. Locate objects in here. Scry is in here. There are some very strong and very comprehend languages is a huge spell. Same with like a tongues as well. I mean, this can solve encounters like that, lickety split.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any. This definitely isn't one of my favorite, but augury exists as well.
Yes.
I think if you're picking stuff from Divination and you read augury, you're gonna be tempted to put it in. Almost everybody will. It's like, I can just see the future
I ask the DM a question about what I'm about to do. Spell.
And clairvoyance as well, and then there's tongues too, which is basically a souped up version of comprehend languages.
I mean, whenever a player casts an augury type spell, I never know what to answer, because it really, I guess the way I always interpret it, let's say Brax were to ask, what happens if I go to this tower to save the princess? What happens if I do this?
I don't know what you do. I have to assume what you're doing.
I mean, a lot could happen between here and there. So I usually try to interpret it as, if nothing out of the ordinary happens on this journey, like if they save the princess, lots of good things. My typical response is wheel and woe, both good and bad. Something good happens if you win, but something bad happens if you lose, and there's bad stuff on the way. Prepare thyself, I hate just saying wheel or woe. I'll always do like a smell or something comes into the, or a feeling washes over the caster. It's a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, it's very much like an insight check. Insight, I would say, is a divination sort of thing as well. I mean, it can be misconstrued other ways, but it's the same sort of concept as to why a DM might get a little miffed about it, just because hopefully at this point you'd be able to just tell where things are going to go, and you don't want to just flat out tell the player. Because especially for people that improv their games a lot, it's going to be pulling stuff out of your ass. And you better remember, if you cut off a session and you told them something about an augury in the previous one, they're going to remember. Your players remember more than you do, I promise.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. Take your notes. So do you got any favorites, or if there's any more staples you got?
My favorites, detect thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Braxton uses this.
I use it so often. So often.
And I think it's a lot stronger than you would think. Because when you first started casting it, you cast it, I think, as someone typically would, just immediately seeing thoughts and stuff. But it's very important to remember this lasts for time. And so you started doing where you'll keep the spell going.
I didn't realize until lately.
Yeah, you'll keep the spell going, and then you'll ask leading questions. Point them in certain directions, and see if their thoughts take them there. Of course, it's as if the save fails, so they don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
and it can lead to some really interesting interactions. You've uncovered some cool information through this.
Yeah, scared off NPCs before as well. It's like sifting through. You've got a bunch of chests in front of you, and it's like you ask guiding questions so you know what chest to go into, and you start sifting through it. And if you're like, I can't go any deeper, there's too much gunk, you make them do a save to try to go farther, but that risks shutting the chest out entirely. And it's so fun to like make thoughts and information into a treasure like that to me, which is why I always play Great Old One Warlocks or people that like forbidden knowledge, because it's so much fun.
Except you're not. You're like a Hexblade masquerading as a Great Old One Warlock right now.
Yeah, basically.
Which I mean, that's what we ended up doing, because it's more fun.
As long as the Great Old One's involved in it, I don't mind at all. Alrighty, what are the favorites you got? Because you got one of mine too. So let's go back to you.
I already said we were talking about scrying. It's very handy, very helpful. You can see
scry
people
for sure.
Foresight. Well, I think first about scry.
You're gonna go with the big boy.
Hang on. The cool first about scry. I'm on scry right now. The cool thing about scry that a lot of people forget is it's not just people. You can scry on locations too, and to me it's used very not often. I've only had a player cast scry on a location twice maybe. And each time it's been very impactful. Like they've uncovered some crazy information. Especially because there's no real save for a location. So
yeah. So there's one spell and a group of spells that D&D made in Unearthed Arcana for modern magic. And one of these is Infallible Ray that I came across and I really liked. You heard about this one at all?
No. Tell me.
The reason I like it is because it is one of those compelling a creature to do something, and it can be a really creepy situation, especially if an NPC does this to somebody. So some sort of device that is used for communication in your world, whatever the hell that is, rings, buzzes, and if a charisma save is failed, whatever creature is there is compelled to answer the call. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like your NPC just like forces your person to like pick up a letter that's being written or something, and you like Harry Potter, you have to write back. Something like that.
Ring.
To me, that's really fun. Stuff like
I'm in the attic, right next to you.
Terrifying. I would make a Harry Potter reference right now, but I literally can't remember. Something about snakes. And bathrooms. Stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So my spell, before we got off on the tangent about scrying and stuff, Foresight. Yeah, you said the big boy spell. This is the 9th level Mac Daddy Divination spell. And I mean, it's a 9th level, so it better be damn powerful. Lasts for 8 hours. And it takes a minute to cast, so you should do this right before combat. But it allows you to see like visions of the immediate future. You're seeing like people moving before they move. You can't be surprised. You have advantage on like literally almost everything in the game. It's if someone's attacking you, they have disadvantage. This is a crazy spell.
Absolutely. Wait a minute. Is Dream not in here?
No, Dream is not a divination spell.
I'm so surprised.
Dream is later. Man.
What the hell? All right, cool. Okay. Awesome. I don't have many other favorites from this one. Just those kind of staples that I talked about.
Just don't remember when Dream is. I'm sure I wrote it down somewhere.
We'll get there. We'll get there at some point.
No, but
Next.
I remember where it is.
Yeah, I think I know what it is as well. All right. Is it time for enchantments?
I feel like this is what we're gonna have to do, Braxton. I think we maybe cover enchantments and then maybe do the typical dungeon crawl fashion.
Are we cutting off?
It's already an hour, man. Typical dungeon crawl fashion. We think something's going to take an hour to cover 8 things, and now we're just nearing the 4th school, and we are about an hour of the podcast.
You're kidding, right?
No.
Holy shit. Oh my God.
Typical dungeon crawl fashion. So maybe we'll do 4 here and then do 4 next time, because enchantment's pretty quick, I think.
Did we already get through? Okay, yeah.
Enchantment's the 4th one.
Okay, cool. So for enchantments, there's I mean, you guys know what this is. It's enhancing something with magical means, basically.
Pretty much.
There you go.
Or
affects the mind of others.
Unenhancing it. That's not a word. You know what I mean?
So again, starting with cantrips, because a lot of you, if you're making a character, you might want to get there. Almost all of these that you see, if you're looking up a list of all the spells that are here, Friends, Mindsliver, and Vicious Mockery. Mindsliver maybe a little bit less, but Friends and Vicious Mockery are wonderful spells, I would say. Those are definitely staples you just take a look at. Especially Friends. A lot of people tend to use this one. Any sort of charm spell tends to be really great.
Yes, I almost feel like we should have a whole podcast just on charms, because they're
a lot of misconceptions.
A lot of misconceptions. They're used very poorly often, or misunderstood, I guess would be a very better word. Some people think some spells do things that they shouldn't and they don't because it's a cantrip. Friends doesn't mean you can now mind control this person. It means you're gonna be a little bit higher on their totem pole, but not much higher.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Zone of Truth for you dungeon or the Adventure Zone fans.
Zone of Truth is definitely one of my favorites for sure.
Absolutely, and I think it's a staple too. And then, I mean, you've got things like Command, Bane, Bless, Sleep.
Hold Person's in here.
Yes. Some of the most basic spells that are in everything
Suggestion.
Are in this.
Might not be a staple for you guys, but it's a staple in my game. Suggestion gets used all the time. Suggestion, subtle spell. I hear those words very, very often.
I mean, it's... I always feel like our friend is stretching the utility of it, like, falsely, but it's literally what it does. It is almost one of those spells like this person does what I want them to.
Yeah.
With like a suggestion. Like,
but it's again one of those things that you're not mind controlling. They're not going to do something that is harmful to themselves. They're not going to do something that is completely out of their wheelhouse of stuff. It has to be something that is reasonable to this character. Something that makes sense.
And then there's a lot of Unearthed Arcana spells dealing with mind stuff that I want to be in here, like Ego Whip and Synchronicity, but we won't dive into that.
Interesting.
Catnap's in here for some of you people because that one is really powerful for certain builds, i.e. Warlock, Sorcerer, multi-classes. Coffee Warlock, this is your spell. And then there's some silly ones like Motivational Speech. What?
Did you mention Bane as a spell?
Yeah, I dropped it on there.
I think Bane's a very strong spell. More handy than people would think.
Bane and Bless. Yeah. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Tasha's Hideous Laughter as a staple.
Very
that
strong.
One's in a lot of shit. And Tasha, she's relevant. She's fun.
She is. She's relevant in 2021 here. I
mean, honestly, almost all of the spells in Enchantment, I would say are staples. I mean, there's they tend to be, you've got Suggestion and then you've got Mass Suggestion. Like they just evolve from previous ones. So it's not as exciting.
Well, there's some,
but that's why I mentioned that.
Some, I'd say all of them are very strong and some are very strong situationally. Like Modify Memory, I love that spell. It's definitely not something everybody should take, but
it's super niche.
It's very niche, and the possibilities for it are literally endless. You can modify it to have it be whatever happened during this section. You can cast it on your friends so they can forget terrible things happen to them. That might be a little rude. Maybe get their permission first.
I'd also like to mention that some of the spells in this, like the names in particular, are really fancy. Like Otto's Irresistible Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. All right, you got any favorites? We kind of ran through a shitload.
My last favorite's Feeble Mind.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know what Feeble Mind does to you?
I don't.
It is not good for the soul, I'll tell you that much. It's a 8th level spell. It can cast from 150 feet away from you. And it basically, you take a little damage, yada, yada, yada. If you fail a saving throw, then your intelligence and charisma become
No.
1. You cannot
What?
cast spells. You cannot activate magical items. You cannot understand languages or communicate. You can only identify your friends, follow them, and protect them. That's it. And guess what? At the end of every 30 days, the creature repeats the saving throw. 30 days. The only other way is obviously with Greater Restoration. That's why I said it's a very important spell that you should always have someone have in the party. Or Wish or Heal. But those are very much higher than Greater Restoration. So if you don't have anybody that has those, you can't find an NPC that has one of those spells, and you just got feeble-minded, have fun for 30 days, my friend. Have
You all
fun.
need to understand my worry right now, my fear. When Ryan says he likes something and it deals with brains, minds, or stuff like that, is in his campaign.
But one of your players or one of your friends
I know.
has
and there's
Greater Restoration.
So now there's a justification that you can use this, but it still scares me.
If it hits that player, though, boom. You guys are in
Hey, if it's
bad
not me,
spot.
I don't give a shit. I'm fine. Sorry,
Doesn't
Daniel.
care about his friends.
As a player, I don't want. That's not fun. I don't get scared. One of my favorites is Psychic Scream because it makes heads explode.
That's a good reason to like something, yeah.
just pop, dead. Okay, gone. And then you've got your power words, pain, and is it kill? Yeah, Nightfall.
Yeah, kill. So. Because you're enchanting them to, I guess, just kill or the other power.
Careful about what people you put this on. Power words can just happen depending on what level you're on and who you are and what you are. So
yeah, they do just happen. There is no save. If they have less than the health that is required, it hits.
So as we've learned, Enchantment is kind of one of those spells that encompasses more than the typical, I guess, video game would have it do. But I also think it is really cool in the way that it affects the world. And
that's why I say this might be more taboo than like a necromancy. The things that a wizard that specializes in this school could do. Ooh.
Well, if you think about it, couldn't Conjuration be a branch of enchantment? Couldn't it?
Why?
Like an evil form of it, because you're enchanting a body to.
Well, the problem is though, if you summon a demon, he's not necessarily on your side.
Yeah.
You'd have to then enchant them to be on your side.
I mean, specifically in the ways of like reviving a dead person.
Sure.
A little bit.
We haven't
I read a couple of little
yeah.
Skyrim books that have enchantment led into necromancy.
True. Okay, I could see the bleed over.
Yeah, I mean, David Brian Gilbert from Polygon, he left recently in one of his videos. His Unraveled was reading every book in Skyrim. This is one of them. Just for reference.
My point being though is if you have a wizard, there's a school for this for this specific school of magic. There is an enchantment school. You have all these wizards running around modifying people's memories. I mean, for Preet's sake, you got people running around and enchant them to be their friends so they get a deal at their store. This is while necromancy is very much in your face. I just resurrected a skeleton. This is stuff that's underneath the surface. This is some nasty magic. But if used well, it's cool.
Necromancy I don't like as much in D&D, especially as a player. It's really hard to survive as a level 1 necromancer. They can't do shit.
For next week, everybody. Because next time, we're going to be covering Evocation. The big boy. That's the one you became a wizard for. Then we got illusion magic. That means you can't see him coming. Necromancy. You're raising people from the dead. And transmutation. You're turning stuff into other stuff. All next week, baby.
Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Don't do that shit. Alrighty. Spells are fun. I've been shitting on wizards a lot. I don't think they're terrible. But when Wizards of the Coast goes, we don't want to make a class. We want to make a spell book. I get a little bored. Just got to throw shade again at Wizards right now. At some point, wait, what? What are you saying?
Which leads me to the news corner.
Oh, shit. I did.
Hang on.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm so sorry that I forgot to do that.
Well,
yeah,
the problem
I
is,
wanted to mention
we
this.
don't have much information on this, right?
No, like none at all.
This is a
Kenneth
leak.
told me a little bit about it. Tabletop. Let me scroll
Pretty
there.
sure this is a leak.
I think it is a leak.
Because it comes out tomorrow. The news comes out the day of this podcast. So everyone who is hearing this probably knows what we're talking about more than we do right now.
Yeah, because this is coming out tomorrow. So if you want to see when some of these things come out before they do, possibly you can join our Discord. Description should be somewhere in the description below. We'd love to have you. This is the new book that likely is coming out in March.
Ooh.
Candlekeep Mysteries.
Whoa.
So if you, what is Waterdeep has dealt with Candlekeep before. I think Saltmarsh as well. So that's where you can learn more about what Candlekeep is. Feel free to search that, figure it out. But this is an anthology of 17 mystery-themed adventures for the world's greatest role-playing game.
Is that D&D?
The bottom of this book. If they're proclaiming it, Wizards of the Coast is saying it on their own. So check it out. It's a fancy little image of two scholarly / like a wizard and maybe a sorcerer looking through a book, trying to figure some shit out.
So it seems like it's probably just a more expansive the
words.
Oh, for Pete's sake. What's that D&D book that's also an anthology?
I'm not going to know.
Damn.
You're on your own here.
Hang on, it's on the tip of my tongue. Tales from the Yawning Portal. So it's like a more expansive Tales from the Yawning Portal. Because I only had like 8 maybe in it. This has 17.
Well, the reason I like this is it seems like something that is made to plop into your game. Especially if you want to learn how to make mysteries for D&D, I hope this is a good source.
Especially if there's 17 of these in here, they're, it better be very easily, moved in.
Yeah. So I think they teased this at some point a while ago, but it isn't confirmed yet. It's a rumor.
Yeah, so this will be confirmed. The announcement is supposed to happen on the 12th, which is the day this podcast releases. We record, obviously, before then. So
yeah. And one of our friends, Dum Face, in our Discord, shout out to him again, mentioned that we might also see Dragonlance later this year.
Cool.
That could be cool. That's all for the news there. Yeah, I wanted to mention this in the beginning, and then I forgot. I was like, I don't know if this is a good time to mention it. So I would have completely missed it. Thank you, Ryan, for getting that.
Next week, we're going to be coming off to those 4 other schools, but we'll also probably have more news to talk about specifically for this book. So I'm excited. And it might not even be this. Maybe this Candlekeep anthology is going to be coming out later this year. And we have a different book coming out tomorrow, but I'd be very surprised if that happens.
Maybe it's a really well done ruse, which also might mean it's not, because that's a mystery. And maybe that's how they reveal it.
It's like an ARG.
That I was about to go on. What is that thing? And you got it before I even said it, man.
Mind control, man. I was casting detect thoughts.
You know what else? Can you detect my thoughts for what I'm thinking about right now?
Yeah, it sounds like, from what I can tell, that you are thinking about social medias at the Dungeon Crawl Pod.
Yes. And where can you find that?
Twitter, Instagram.
Oh, yeah. You can do that. What else? Is there a way they can talk to us? Like, I'm thinking about it right now. Is there something else?
Gmail is what I'm picking up. I think it's dungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, you're freaking me out here, man. You're reading my mind. I don't even know. Did you pass a check for detect thoughts or something?
No, that's just on your surface level, man.
Holy fuck. What else?
I know,
what else
you got a lot of stuff on your surface level.
Damn, I don't want to know if you go deeper what happens.
How about I'll let me do my save. Actually, I guess let me see if are you doing the save? Right?
Am I doing the save? I guess so. Do I have to roll?
I don't know.
I've got a dice roller on my stream deck.
Roll it, dude.
I got a 19. Sorry.
Damn. Now you knew I was casting. I was basically telling you I was casting it too.
Shit, man. Stop reading my mind, even though I told you to.
So the Twitter, Dungeon Crawl Pod, Gmail, the Dungeon Crawl Pod @gmail.com. You cast it on me. What am I thinking?
You're thinking, I'm getting some like dark thoughts here, man.
Ooh,
hold on.
Don't go too deep.
Oh shit.
Keep on the surface level.
He's seeming like aggressively, you're like wanting people to talk about us on a certain.
Well, I would like that.
On iTunes, maybe?
Apple Podcasts, but sure, yeah.
Apple Podcasts? If we're talking about, I couldn't quite tell. Your mind's a little hard to read right now, but I see some stars, maybe 5 of them.
I was trained in the art of confusion.
Well, from what I can get right now, you'd prefer if there are some 5 stars on the Apple Podcast, maybe saying, hey, these guys, they can read minds apparently right now. So if I check out further podcasts, maybe they'll own the world At some point, you should keep listening to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
They might even read minds of their viewers and come up with amazing topics in the future. I thought about wizards at one point and they made an episode. 5 stars.
Wow.
That's what Ryan's
You
thinking.
knew exactly what I was thinking. That's impressive.
I know exactly what you're thinking. Yeah. We wouldn't be doing this. We're literally one mind, hive mind.
Yeah.
The dungeon crawl.
It was a good bit, man.
Yeah. He's been Ryan.
He's been Braxton, as always.
This is the dungeon crawl. Next week, we'll finish up our spells. Hope to see you there.
Mm-hmm.
Take care. Look at the YouTube. Join our Discord. Goodbye.
Be safe, guys.
Back into my book now.
See ya.
Deuces. End that shit.